Hallo und herzlich willkommen beim 4. Tag der Brettspielkritik. Sehr schön, dass so viele da sind. Ich bin die Jo Franz von der Jury für Spiel des Jahres und ich werde heute unseren Auftakt hier moderieren. Ganz zu Anfang noch ein paar kurze organisatorische Sachen. Es haben viele von euch hoffentlich schon gesehen. Drüben findet ihr dann die Einteilung für alle Arbeitsgruppen heute am restlichen Tag. Und Mittagessen wird dann gleich nach der ersten Arbeitsgruppe stattfinden. Dafür braucht dann jeder noch ein neues Bändchen und bitte das Schildchen. Genau. Und das sind so die kleinen organisatorischen Infos. Und dann würde ich auch gleich schon rübergehen zum wichtigeren und interessanteren Teil. Und auf Englisch wechseln. So we are here today for our first opening table with Tom Brewster and Daniel Wüllner. Tom Brewster is a podcaster and YouTuber for Shut Up and Sit Down, and we'll be talking about On the Same Page. And Daniel Wüllner writes for the Süddeutsche Zeitung and for the Spielbox, and we'll be talking about bending the rules of criticism. We will have a Q&A afterwards where you can ask questions. And with that, I would give it over to you, Tom.
Okay. Hello. Is this working? Can you hear me? Hi. Shall I stand? Is that weird? Is it weird to stand or shall I sit? Stand on the table. That would be great. I'm going to apologize straight away. I've not got the noble paper. I'm going to use my phone like a true youth. So apologies for that. Hello, everyone. I was asked by the lovely Juli to write a keynote for this event. So I merrily started writing away without really checking what I was meant to actually be writing. So sorry. Today's thing is a little bit of a mess, but I'm hoping it's going to be an interesting mess, at least for you. Hold on, hopefully I'll get my slide soon. It kind of sums up what I'm talking about. It's going to be called, or it was called, On the Same Page, but I only remembered that last night. And so now I've actually got a completely different title for this presentation that you'll know what that title is when it flashes up on the screen in big letters. That will be the moment that you know the real title of this address. So anyway, lovely to meet you all. My name is Tom Brewster. I make video reviews for a website called Shut Up and Sit Down. If you don't know the channel at the moment, they are very silly videos. Here is a picture of me climbing through a window. I'm meant to be dressed as Robin Hood. As you can see, my skin-tight green morph suit. This is me being an oil baron, smearing my face with crude oil. This is a man made of meat that I constructed for a video. As you can tell, the videos they're all a bit absurd. They're all a bit silly, and I don't think anyone really takes us very seriously, even if we want to be taken seriously. So I'm really looking forward to spending some time today and over the weekend talking about serious games with serious people in a very serious way. This is Adam Sandler. He's an actor best known for some very bad movies, Grown Ups and Grown Ups 2, Click, the list goes on. I'm really sorry if you had to watch any of them. I'm really sorry if you enjoyed them. I also wrote the start of this assuming that Adam Sandler was a recognizable figure in Germany. If this doesn't translate, I'm really sorry about the rest of this speech. It's not going to make a lick of sense. So I really, it's not going to make sense because this is the real title of this keynote address, The Adam Sandler Theory of Board Game Criticism. So I really don't like Adam Sandler. I think his presence in a lot of movies strongly indicates that I'm going to have a terrible time in that film. I find him abrasive and boring. I think he is simply not a very good actor or comedian. And so naturally, as someone who absolutely hates Adam Sandler, I have this picture of him framed on my desk. Now, this picture has been in my eyeline for about 8 hours every single working day for the last 6 years of my life. Every time I've moved house, Adam has come with me. When I go to write in a cafe near to me, Adam comes with me, his little framed picture. Sometimes I even bring him with me on trips abroad to Germany. And this would be the part where I would show you my framed picture of Adam Sandler if I remembered to put it in my luggage, which I did not. So why is this? Why do I have this picture of Adam Sandler? Looking at something that you hate every single day seems like the activity of a madman. Well, this particular picture of Adam Sandler is taken from the 2019 movie Uncut Gems. It's a really fabulous film. Has anyone seen Uncut Gems? It's great. It's really good, right? It's a good film. As you can... There's huge fans in the audience, I can tell already. It's great. It's a fabulous movie. He plays a jewelry dealer in New York. He lives this very chaotic lifestyle. He's spinning all these thousands of different plates, and it's really starting to get to him. And this culminates in the events of the movie. You kind of watch him have the worst day of his life. Everything bad happens to him at once. It's very relatable. I think it's a brilliant film. I really adore it, as did a lot of the critical sphere in movies. But I went into it deeply cynical of how good it was going to be, because it features Adam Sandler, an actor who I previously absolutely loathed. And here is the point in all of this nonsense that I've been spewing at you for the last 5 minutes. One of my... in reading the trusted critics in the film sphere, reviews of Uncut Gems don't express the writer's love for Adam Sandler in this movie as a fact of his character. Neither, in other reviews of other movies, do they express their distaste for Sandler as an actor or an entity. They criticize how he is used and how he expresses within a movie. One of my biggest problems with the board game critical sphere at the moment is that collectively we place a huge amount of emphasis on mechanics in isolation rather than their position in a larger fabric. There's an ongoing assumption that understanding each individual cog leads to a perfect understanding of the whole machine. And I find this so often to not be the case. If you'll allow me some examples. This is Molly House. I don't know if any of you have played Molly House. Oh, hello. Maybe I can switch. This is good because I'm about to get really boring. Is this better, or is this still crackly? Oh, it's better? Nice. Should I move further this way?
Turn ours off.
If I move over here... Oh, hey! Or it's still a little crackly, isn't it? It's fine. It's okay. All right. I'm so sorry to your cameraman who now has to readjust the whole setup. We'll take a short break from my rambling. Where was I? Okay, this is Molly House. This is my example, or one of my examples. I'm sorry, you're going to have to sit through a few of them. Molly House is this electric piece of design. It wrestles with the joy and danger of being openly queer in 17th century London. I hope some of you have had a chance to play it, or will play it soon. I think it's brilliant. And it's also a roll and move game. And so many serious critics who I played this game with were immediately frustrated by the fact that it was a roll and move game. They saw it as a mechanic that is undignified. They saw it as a mechanic that doesn't really have a place in a lot of modern design. But you've got to listen to it sing in this context. It creates friction and frustration by design. It mimics a sprint across London, the agony of missing out on a party, the queasy thrills of wanting everything and getting nothing or worse. It uses the base nature of roll and move within a context where it really works. When we are looking at this instance of roll and move, are we watching Uncut Gems or are we watching Grown Ups 2? I'll give you another example, and this is a little bit more indulgent because we have some involvement in this game, so full disclosure. But this is Wilmot's Warehouse. It's a game that we worked on. It is a memory game, though, and it's a simple memory game as well. And so many people immediately tune out as soon as you say those words. This is not their kind of thing, right? Because they are appraising the cog before they even watch it move. They say it's a memory game. We're kind of past memory games, right? Oh, memory. Terrible mechanic. What are you talking about? Playing Wilmot's Warehouse, you'll see that you're not engaging with memory as it has existed in other games. You're engaging with a different kind of memorization. Sorry, you're engaging with memory, not rote memorization. You're using memory in the same way that you might when you're remembering that joke your friend told that one time that left everyone in stitches. What was the name of that guy that we knew once? The fondness for sharing an experience with close friends. Memory is an ingredient to create something far more rich and hearty and creative. 4 out of 10. I wouldn't play it again. The third example is actually outside of the board game sphere, and it's quite a long one. Sorry, it's also very indulgent, but I'm going to stick with it because I think it's important. This is a gallery that I used to work at. I used to be a curatorial assistant, so I sorted out art that would go in this wonderful space. It was by the sea. And for our grand opening, we commissioned a piece by this mad artist who came to us with an unhinged PowerPoint and a million weird ideas bursting at the seams. And his first slides sort of looked something like this. He was showing us lots of pictures of lighthouses, some construction diagrams, and then tons of pictures of this plant, the night blooming cereus. It is a very rare species. It blooms at night once in a year. Once only does it actually reveal itself like this. We were very close to opening the gallery, so we sort of watched this presentation and we said, sure, whatever, use the space however you want, go for it. And for the next week, he worked on this project in the gallery space. The first thing he did was he ordered a huge number of these big plastic crates into the gallery space. And they blocked the doors to the office. They were a huge pain to move around. They were really annoying, these plastic crates that he ordered. And we didn't know why they were there. And then he ordered huge amounts of incredibly fine bread flour to the gallery as well. Just bags and bags and bags of bread flour. And we had to put them under our desk, so I had to sit with my legs like this around the flour on the floor. It was ridiculous. It was really annoying, and we didn't know why he'd ordered them. And then he ordered a bunch of speakers, these huge, speakers like this sort of thing that he put into the gallery. And again, we were really confused as to why he had ordered any of these things. And then he closed the doors to the gallery space, and he spent a few days just putting it all together, working away in silence. And in the end, what had he made? He'd made a huge pile of crates, speakers, and loose flour just dumped into the gallery space on the floor in a big glass box. And it looked terrible. It looked truly awful. We didn't understand it whatsoever. And then he went to the pub and had a drink. And we felt scammed. We felt conned. It just dumped all this rubbish into the gallery. And then we had opening day with all these people coming in. And they were like, what is this? They were confused. They thought it was terrible. And we thought it was terrible too. But then, late into the afternoon, we were sat in this gallery space, and the speakers that he had placed inside of these crates started playing this sort of groaning noise. It was a noise that got louder and louder and louder and louder until it was this deafening blast that resonated across the entire gallery. It just kept getting louder, and it got to this point where we were worried that it was starting to shake the room and the brickwork, and it felt like your whole body was being sort of vibrated like this. And as this happened, all of the flour, this bread flour that he'd dumped all over these speakers, slowly began to rise into the air, filling the gallery space with this swirling mist of this fine powder. It was blooming in front of our eyes. And in that moment, we forgot about the crates and the speakers and the flour and the hassle of it all. We were watching the night blooming cereus. We were seeing it bloom in front of our eyes. We were connected to this space, seeing it as a lighthouse, connected to the past of this building in this once-in-a-lifetime transportive moment. Now, I want to clarify, this silly rambling of looking at the whole rather than the individual here, as I'm kind of laying out, it could all seem a little bit obvious to you folks. I've put on this slide like this. It could all seem a bit obvious. You could be rolling your eyes. And I don't know if this way of looking at games is necessarily the case within the board game critical sphere. I don't know if you're already kind of smart to this idea of making sure you're looking at the whole rather than these individual cogs. And I'd like to learn more from you folks over the weekend talking about criticism. But I do think it is a problem, this way of looking at games, is a problem in the larger industry. Did any of you see this? I thought it was fascinating. So this is a promo for the new David Turtzi game, and I have nothing against him as a designer. This isn't me roasting David Turtzi here. But I find this advert to be absolutely fascinating. You can see at the top, mechanisms, worker placement, city building, tile placements, contracts, end of round bonuses, set collection. In my head, I'm imagining someone reading through this list and they're sort of half paying attention. Then they get to end of round bonuses and they go, what? And their eyes snap open and suddenly they're interested. I find this such a strange way to engage with art, right? Oil, canvas, 56 inches in height, created in the 1820s? Well, Saturn devouring his son gets the Dice Tower seal of approval. This is also my final slide. It's just going to be sat here for the rest of this, so I really hope you enjoy it. I'm joking around, but I do legitimately think that this is a problem. There's a huge amount of board game criticism on the platform, and so much of it, including my own channel, leans into these singular instanced appraisals of mechanics rather than holistic observations about the greater work. We use critical shorthand to breeze past the important work. We breeze past the whole. We review each cog, and then we review the machine. But we review it almost motionless, a still image of the parts that are laid out in front of us, not an alive, whirring thing. I was guesting on someone's podcast recently, and while we were talking about this theme of criticism, there was this very silly moment. At the end of all this discussion, the host of the podcast said, well, if you don't judge a book by its cover, then surely you shouldn't judge a game by its mechanics. And it really made me laugh. It's ridiculous, right? It's so silly. But I do think that there is a vein of truth to it. I find so often that the critical sphere is a little behind the curve on what these games are capable of expressing. We're looking at games as dopamine engines. We're deducting points for jagged edges, and we miss the feeling. Because what we so often identify is preference. A game presents a rule set, and half the job is done. It's got worker placement. We like worker placement. Tick. It's got trick-taking. We like trick-taking right now. Tick. And there's no work to identifying this preference. There's little work to understanding individual functions and appraising them consecutively to scry a result. Today's game reviewers are very keen to be balanced and to offer honest appraisals. They know what they like, and things outside of that bubble are criticized. And this is weak criticism. And it's weak criticism that's impactful given the small nature of this hobby, proportionally. This middling critique steers publishers. They are more likely to greenlight games that run familiar lines that play well with reviewers. And this, in turn, leads to an insubstantive design space and a weaker hobby that serves fewer people. And as critics, we must rise to meet this new school of designers that are uninterested in clean, perfectionist clockwork design. We're approaching more and more confrontational design work where scrutinizing performances leads to misunderstandings of the wider work. These designs are not still images. They're not paintings of technique and mastery. They are participatory. They bend and change based on your interaction with them. Take the time to not look at each mechanic as a bead on a string, but a spice in a soup. Look the designer square in the eyes and see how their choices feed into an experience and engage with that experience on its own terms. Do not look down at the pieces on the table, but instead around you and watch the cereus bloom. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tom, for that. That was really interesting, very entertaining. And I'm very curious to see what kind of questions we get to that afterwards. But with that, I'm going to also give the word over to Daniel. We'll now continue with bending the rules of criticism.
I'm not quite sure if I'm able to be as entertaining as Tom. Thank you very much, Tom. And I'm not sure if this piece of paper will help me do that better than he did, so I'll give it a try. I'm always invited when there's somebody to bring us down after we have joy. I was the stiff guy is the German set of rules. That's me. I'm always here to get you down a little bit in order to speed up the process. I want to talk about rules today. And I want to talk about rules in board games. I have to apologize, because I'm not a native speaker, I printed out this one as well, so I try to look you in the eyes, but I try to see my piece of paper as well. So, talking about rules in board games, and in general, and rules of writing, filming, and recording reviews and critiques in particular. But first, let's do a little exercise with you. When was the last time you broke a rule playing a board game? Does anybody know? Anybody has a recollection? No? You don't cheat? None of you do. I know. What did you do?
I broke a rule.
Sure. Sure you did. Maybe you re-rolled a dice in a solitaire game, although you weren't allowed to? Or your group decided to rewind to a more promising situation in your recent co-op game? Or I changed the microphone.
Sorry. He's breaking the rules.
Maybe it's me. Does it work better? Yeah, it does. Better get change my hand, otherwise I can't use the computer. Or do you house rule regularly in order to speed up the process, in order to speed up the market in Dune Imperium? I took this one from Steam because I couldn't find a good picture and didn't want to recreate. You see on the left over there's Kwitzat Haderach. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. I'm not quite sure if anybody won with this card, but it's too expensive, but it lays in the market, and you're not able to speed it up. So there are house rules. Some play with house rules in order to get these cards off the table. I have to confess, the last time I cheated was in a computer game. I played Blueprints. I'm not quite sure if anybody knows. Although it's not a board game, it feels like the most evolved version of an escape room up to date. What did I do? I actually looked up the riddle of the orchid yard in order to get there, in order to get like 20 extra steps each day. I'm sorry. I did it. Shame on me. If you need any help solving the more complex puzzles, feel free to ask Manu. He's the expert on the game. He's over there. Join his Discord channel. They are always talking, still talking, like after 100 hours, still talking about the game. But why is playing by the rules in board games so important? I would go so far as to say that it's the most important thing in our hobby. But why? Because people of different age and gender with different religion and ethnical and social backgrounds join at the table to engage in a shared experience, to play a board game. A board game only works if we all agree to agree on a fixed set of rules. It lays the foundation for the experience, but it also sets our differences aside for the duration of play. There are some exceptions, games like Mogelmotte, for example, or Amable Holland's City of Six Moons. Deciphering the rules is an integral part of playing the game. Thank you very much, Arabelle. You can see the game over there, and this one is the rule set. So there are also symbols, and you have to decipher the symbols in order to get what's going on in the game. I don't know why she did it, but she did it, and looking forward to playing that one. Does rule breaking destroy the shared experience of playing a board game? In order to answer that question, let's go back to Paul Dennon's Dune for a moment. Because nobody can afford the Kwitzat Haderach, maybe we should reconsider house ruling the market. Is it really cheating if all players agree to a different set of rules? Bending the rules can be a way to cope with a perceived flaw in a game. When writing a critique about a board game, we do not have the luxury of house ruling. The job of a critic in general, and that of the members of the Spiel des Jahres jury in particular, should only regard the game as it had produced, published, and presented. You see, I bring down and get the fun out of it, so that's my job. Yet, rules still influence the realm of board game critique, the topic we intend to discuss over the course of this weekend. There are no written rules for critiquing a board game, no guidelines. The only limits are the expectations of your audience, the spatial limitations of the printed page, YouTube's and Spotify's algorithms, but the rest is totally up to your own imagination. And that is the first problem. I have to admit that I was bored with board game journalism 5 years ago. When Andreas Becker asked me to write for the Spielbox, I did not want to join the group of old white men, sorry Harald, who explained rules to other old white men. You are an old white man, you know that. Just a joke. Until I realized that Andreas wanted to bend the rules, to transform the Spielbox into more of a magazine people would really like to read. And he said, like, let's do interviews with people German readers do not know. Let's do new features. Let's introduce a funny column at the end. Thanks, Maren, for making us laugh. The first message of this impulse is a plea to you as critics. I beg you, please bend the rules of criticism. You don't have to reinvent the wheel or break the rules of how you talk about games. Your sole goal is to entertain your listeners, viewers, and readers. Convince us that we should waste our precious little time not on your chatter about the latest hotness or boring unboxing videos, but on your carefully selected words about this game that no one else has looked upon the way you do. There are no written rules in board games, and no way to write a perfect critique. There's no image of what it should look like. Hopefully, the workshops you will participate in today won't give you a simple list of boxes to check while writing. It certainly is important to know the basic tools of how to conduct and edit an interview, how to entertain different audiences on different platforms. But in the end, you have to learn when to put these tools away in order to present your own ideas and perspectives about our wonderful hobby. Go out and experiment, fail, and grow while doing that. But please go out and bend the rules of criticism. I'm not done yet. There's more to come. You see these pages? I want to you leave and now wait, please stay, sit. It's like, it's going on. It keeps going on, getting better. I'm not done yet. I said there are no written rules, no codex for board game criticism. That is not entirely true. The German Presserat would beg to differ. Their so-called Pressekodex offers rules and ethical standards for journalists. I know. You're always offended when I use the J word on you. But the profession of publishing an article, a podcast, a YouTube video, even about something as seemingly mundane as a board game, has a name, and it's called journalism. Everything else is just advertisement. I took a look at the Pressekodex for you in order to speed up this talk, and I've summarized some of the most important points, the most important aspects of the Codex as bullet points. Don't worry, the rules are mostly common sense. Interviews have to be correct. We all know that. We can't juggle answers and questions. It's always important to get the people right. So there's no problem at all, we know that. Presumption of innocence. I think none of you is going to go to court and report about the latest incident, so this one is off the table as well. Graphic depictions. I mean, we mostly show board games, we don't show images of people and other stuff, so this is not a problem for us. And I don't even have to explain this one at all. No discrimination against religion, ethics, etc. While the first few points are quite obvious, the later tend to enter our domain of work more and more often. We have conflicts of interest. We have a division between editorial advertisement, which had to be addressed, exclusive rights, and invitations and gifts, talking about compliance and similar stuff. Let's go back to January 2025. While visiting the Nürnberg Spielwarenmesse, German publisher Cosmos supplied reviewers, such as me, with a shopping bag of Catan-shaped ice trays and other merchandise. I took mine as gladly as I later passed it along to a friendly intern at Ravensburger. They nearly completely perfectly explained their game, so she asked me, "Can I have that bag?" And I said, "Okay, sure." I later asked Stefan if I can get some of his goodies back because, I wanted the ice trays. But like so many other visitors, Cosmos also invited me to eat their delicious red velvet cake. It was humongous. It was large. It was really large. I think this one was the second piece. There was another one as well. So this piece of cake also appeared in a short piece of mine for the Spielbox about the fair in February. I do not know how I reviewed the last game from Cosmos openly, but I know that writing about the cake might have produced a bad aftertaste in some readers' mouths. Please don't get me wrong. You can have your cake and eat it too, sure. But you need to know that your actions have consequences of how your work as a critic is viewed. Does Daniel Wüllner favor Flip 7 as the Spiel des Jahres? Is it because he ate Cosmos' delicious red velvet cake? Sounds ridiculous, I know. But whether you call yourself a journalist or not, working with board game publishers and marketing people poses conflict of interest. These conflicts have sneaked into our cozy niche of board game criticism. I know that sponsored content helps finance a hobby turned into a job. Working with board game publishers and authors on their projects is a conflict of interest and has to be made transparent. How can I otherwise be impartial when criticizing other projects from different publishers and different authors? And even if I tell them and be transparent, there's still something sticks. There has to be a clear division between editorial criticism on the one hand and advertisement of a product on the other. Unboxing videos blur these lines. So how to distinguish between them? Maybe by placing advertisement banners in your video, telling your listeners that you get an early preview copy of a game for Kickstarter? And what will happen if you break or ban these rules? Surely the Presserat won't notice. You won't get sued for that. But your audience will notice. Eventually, it will hurt the trust in your work as a critic. Even if I tell my audience that this is just a job to earn some money, it still has the potential to taint my reputation. The trust of the audience might not pay the bills for hosting costs, expensive equipment, and leaving your 9-to-5 job behind. But ultimately, their decision to support you as a journalist, as a critic, as a creator, will solely depend on their trust in you. Don't waste that. And trust me, I know I work for a newspaper. We're trying constantly to convince readers and subscribers to regain their trust after Lügenpresse and other incidents. It's hard for us to really get to people and get to make them trust us again. Although we didn't do anything wrong, in my perspective. Breaking and even bending the rules of journalism will have an impact, not only on your reputation, but also on board game criticism in general. Because you're setting the standards when blurring these lines. I know I impose like a lot on you. You do something as a hobby, and now I'm coming with ethical standards and like push you even more down. These are the rules you have to stick to, abide to. But I think it's really important to have a standard, which we might talk afterwards, because for me it's really important to have these standards in order to be trusted by our audience. So, please do not bend the rules of journalism. Thank you very much.
Thank you both so much for your inspiring and interesting talks. I think you both brought up very interesting topics along the lines of ethics that we follow, but also along the lines of what board game criticism can do and what the purpose of board game criticism is, and how we can write or publish criticism of board games that goes far beyond the lines of what we've known until today, or what a lot of critics do. And with that, I'll go over to the Q&A portion. Feel free to raise your hand if you have questions. Steff will come to you with the microphone, and also feel free to ask your question in German. I can translate.
Guess we covered everything.
Yeah.
It's a personal question.
A personal question. Are there days... I'm not sure this is working. It is? Okay. Are there days where Adam Sandler just has to like go down? Like where you just can't look at his face anymore and you just have to...
Is that intended as a... Do we have to sometimes look at...
Yeah.
Are we looking at this metaphorically?
Yes, we are. Sorry.
Uh-huh. Wait, is my mic on?
No, it's not.
Wow. See, this is the problem. My metaphor got a little bit contorted. This is what I was worrying about this morning, is that it's not as clean as I'd like in my nice PowerPoint. Because there are sometimes when something sticks out, a performance, if we're using the metaphor, is so undeniably awful that it spoils the rest of the movie. And I think that is definitely the case where you can have someone who is, if we're continuing the film metaphor, you can have an actor who is so poorly chosen for a role that it makes no sense for them to be used in this context. But broadly, I think there's a point to be made that you should be thank you. You should be kind of questioning why it was chosen in the first place, I suppose. I think that's the main thing is that I wanted to get at, is the idea that it's kind of checking the presumption, right, before you begin to say, do I just not like Adam Sandler, or do I just not like the many performances he has given over the years? And that is kind of the cuts the same way for game critics, I think. I hope that answers the question. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, hi. It's not working again, does it? It's working, yeah. A question for Daniel. You said the audience will make a choice, but as I see it, the audience often makes a choice to watch 10's top list or the next unboxing video instead of reading my article. And I believe you have the same problem at Süddeutsche, right? Because the audience will read Bild or other venues. So how do we deal with that? Do you have an idea?
I have to admit, I live in my fantasy where we do all the reviews that Shut Up and Sit Down and No Pun Included do all the time. Maybe they can tell something about how good the like critical videos work in contrast to like buy these 4 games for Christmas. So I think you're right. Definitely you're right. But I think it hurts our criticism the way. I mean, we are here to actually evolve to some degree and not do the stuff all the same. So that is why we're here and we're talking about this topic in order to make board game journalism better to some degree. And actually, I have to admit that we have problems at the Süddeutsche Zeitung, but we actually introduced people to subscribing model to pay for journalisms, and so now we don't give them on social media like the fast clicks and the funny stories they like to talk about, but we're actually trying to convince them to pay for more exclusive content, for stories they don't get at the FAZ or like the Zeit, for example. So we're trying to push something, to push kind of content we think that people want and people are going to pay for, or in your case like a readership, like a viewership that is worth cultivating to some degree. I'm not quite sure if that answers the question, but I see the problem, and I see the problem of I really hate top 10 lists, I'm sorry, except Brettspielkritik making a top 10 list, I have to admit. And I really hate unboxing videos, but I also watch them. So I know it's a problem, but I can't help it. I can only like be an advocate for more videos that push the boundaries to some degree and not be the same stuff, because some people don't know what they really want or like should be shown something different in order to get a little bit further than we are right now.
Yeah, and I think you can also improve a top 10 list, right? I mean, if you take your standards and you go another way, you can still do a top 10 list that people maybe want to click on, but then it's cool content. And you can make a whatever other boring format that you maybe normally don't like, but then just make it a nice way of doing it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. I think if you take your rules that you just set, you can improve everything with it.
Sure, surprise your audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, a question for Daniel. You said that unboxing videos are blurring the line between journalism and sponsoring. Why is that, in your opinion?
I got the impression that you just show a content and you don't show like a really critical view upon the product you're talking about. You just show the content of it and not what it does. It would be something like Tom said, like judging a book by its cover, and you just see the cover of it and the content. I don't know if it's a valid form of criticism. I haven't seen unboxing videos that give me the idea of what is going on in the game. It's just like Inhaltsangabe.
First of all, thank you so much for your inspiring talks. I actually have a question for both of you, but I'm going to start with Daniel, because the thing is, I think it's so interesting that on the one hand side, you said that our sole goal is to entertain our audience, and on the other hand, you said we should stick to the rules of journalism. And in a way, I find this a bit contradictory, because, I mean, rules are not necessarily something I find entertaining, even though I find board games very entertaining. So you gave me some food for thought. But what I really wanted to ask is, in a way, where we draw the line. So where do we bend the rules and where do we not? See, the thing is, actually, my husband is a lawyer, and people tend to think that when they ask him something, he will be like, yeah, the law is this, and so it's done. The thing he does answer all the time is, it depends. Or he even has a mug that says that. And I love it a lot. The thing is, well, it depends. Okay, so it depends on what? So where do we draw the line? Is it, for example, being aware of, for example, getting gifts from publishers? Is it being transparent about it? So where would you draw the line as to what ethics we need to stick to and should not compromise on?
Thank you very much. I think the most important thing is the transparency for me, in order to give the audience a possibility to judge upon what have you been doing. We were sitting together eating that cake at Cosmos in Nuremberg, so I don't have a problem with that. But sometimes I ask myself, the next game I want to review for Spielbox is again in a row a next game from Frosted Games, because I like their games, and I ask myself, is that okay? I can't sleep at night, but I really like, do I propose a different game from a different publisher? Otherwise people might see that it's like the third game from the same publisher in a row I wrote about. I don't write that much, and I don't produce that much content like you do, like all of you do. So I would say transparency, and the question is, how obvious is something? How important is transparency in different ways? Because I'm really not quite sure if you really need an advertisement banner for an unboxing video. I don't think so. But I think you have to ask yourself, and if you're in discussion with your audience, I think you all know via social media how your audience think about the stuff you do. But I would say transparency.
Yeah, to add to what you're saying, it was funny listening to you speak, because a lot of the time there were moments where I went, "Ooh," and maybe got a little red, because, you know, as an entity, we are, you know, we have a relationship with certain publishers. Like, as an entity, should I sit down? Is this on? We also have a contorted relationship, but the way that we see it is that it is all about transparency. Like, we've worked with Paolo Mori recently on a game that we're bringing to market. That's a huge overstep between journalistic integrity and publishing. That we're doing both in that instance. And what we owe our audience in that moment is just transparency. So much so that we reviewed a Paolo Mori game recently on our podcast, and we had about 5 minutes of disclosure of going, yeah, we've worked with this guy, you know, this is whatever. And then we said it was terrible. I think it's important in any context to just have that. It's all about an informed choice by the audience. They need to know what they're getting into when you start saying something like that. But yes, it's interesting finding out that that's what we're here to do, right? What we're here to understand at this event is where that line between entertainment and very hard-hitting, serious criticism lies, because it depends, as you said.
But it's great that you mentioned that, especially with being so serious about criticism? Because, I mean, you said that we should appreciate games more as an holistic art form. And then you also showed a picture of yourself climbing through a window in a Robin Hood costume.
Yeah.
Should we maybe also approach criticism as an art form? And if so, should it not be allowed to break all the rules?
Yeah, I think it should. But I think that, like, it's. I was showing the images of that kind. I think they're humorous. I feel like I don't personally think that my Robin Hood board game is art, but I do think that it's, in the same way that art can be very serious and very somber, it can also be very like playful and silly. Like I think I did a review for John Company a while ago that people have said, "Oh, that's a great review. You really got into it. That's real serious criticism." But that's only because the tone of it is very deliberately serious and pointed. But in the same way, I feel like criticism can be flippant and silly and ridiculous, but still be serious criticism. It's just that there are two different kind of spheres at play. The part of you that's trying to get across your opinions and the part of you that's trying to get them across in a way that people will watch and people will find enjoyable. I think that's something when people go to art galleries, there's often this, they'll walk around and, be pondering and examining and being all very serious about it. But some of my favorite gallery experiences have been immersive and silly and daft and playful. They're still very serious, just in a different context, right? I hope that answers some of the questions that have been flying around.
Steph, good. Sorry.
I think you may have answered my question just previously, but because it's along the similar vein. Because in Britain, the laws changed last year about advertising. We have as you do, have very strict advertising laws. So it changed so that even if you are getting a review copy, for example, you must say in whatever journalistic area you work in, this is a product placement. Mm-hmm. Like this is an advertisement for this game. So I guess my question to both of you really, but particularly Daniel, but both of you, was how do we, and I think that's confusing for our audiences, because if I've never played a board game and I just watch a video and I don't know who you are, or I don't know, I haven't followed your stuff, how do I know whether you've been paid to say these things or whether you have just received a game? So how do we operate within the laws of our own countries, but also within, for our audiences? It was that kind of thing.
That's why I think that it's funny that the law in the UK, it's kind of that example kind of shows that it's such a strange in particular. Right, exactly. Nobody follows it. Arrest me. But I do think that it doesn't really make much sense. But I think it's all about, from our perspective, if we are paid to look at something, it's all about disclosing that immediately with no burying it deeper into the video or something like that. You must immediately say, this is our relationship with this thing. But I think that any fully paid review content at all is super dangerous. I think that's the most important part of disclosure. But there's a muddiness around other forms of content, like an unboxing video as an example. Because I think that the audience they're not stupid and oftentimes can see paid promotion directly for what it is quite immediately. When we have done anything that is in any realm sponsored, they can just tell immediately and we will say this is sponsored, but they'll know before they even click.
But is that because of how you present it?
And I think it's how we present it now, but also how we have presented it over time. I think that it's all about a building with an audience, and that's also where it's dangerous, because that can be exploited if you suddenly decide actually we're not going to tell people and we're just going to get the kickback. That's why the integrity is important, to be well, we could be, I'm sure that publishers would pay for us to take reviews.
Sure they would.
And we've declined. We always decline. But the only way that we can now reach into areas that we're not normally comfortable with is because the audience knows that we're doing it in a contained way. We're not doing it as a sort of blanket policy that now all of our coverage is paid. We're just taking, they know that because we are so clear about the parts of our content that are biased and cannot be trusted. They know the stuff that can be trusted really can be trusted by contrast. If that makes sense. I don't know how.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been only working for newspapers, for the Süddeutsche Zeitung and for the Spielbox. In the Süddeutsche Zeitung, we have like a Redaktionsstatut, and it's a clear division between any paid content at all and just like regular paid jobs. And I did some years back, I did a review of some during a strike of the Deutsche Bahn. I did review some board game, like some apps, some game apps, in order to waste the time while you're waiting for the next train to arrive. And I bought all these like small apps for like 5 to 10 euros. And the guy who produced my article, he put like a line underneath, like these games were given by the publisher. And it's, no, that's not true. I paid them for myself, and it's like I wanted like to somehow correct that, but it didn't matter at all in that problem. But I still have a problem with review copies, because review copies are something for me. I know it's a really huge topic in the industry, in our scene, that when I request a copy, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do a review. And publishers ask me, where's the review? It's like, I just wanted to see your game. And when the publisher says, okay, we don't send you any other games, like, okay, fine. But I know that I have the luxury of working for a newspaper, and I don't like write regularly, but whenever I do something for the Spielbox, I actually do the review when I ask for the game. So I'm not in trouble, but I really think about when I get games and when I ask for review copies, because I think the first time is like, I know I have to like play games in order to know what I'm talking about, in order to make comparisons about games maybe I'm not reviewing, but are interesting in that contrast, to see like different escape rooms in order to review this escape room. So, but every time I'm like guest in a podcast or in a YouTube video, I say stuff I'm not quite sure if it's okay and if I like cross any lines. So but in my professional context, there's like a clear division between paid content and editorial work.
Thank you. Thank you for your talks as well. They were great.
Thanks.
And I think we may have time for one short last question, but then we're out of time.
Who was first?
I think I think you were first, but I'm sorry if I saw that. Yeah.
So this is, I'm not sure if it's short. Of course, it depends on your answer.
Okay.
It's for both of you. So I was wondering if transparency is enough. So you said, Tom, that you are trying to be as transparent as possible. But I was wondering if this is enough, because, for example, you make a review, and at the beginning you say, okay, I got this copy for free, and I know the publisher, and maybe I have designed a scenario for a board game or something. I'm thinking of Frosthaven, sorry, Efka. Just an example, just a random example. And people like you because you are a very likable person. So I watch your videos, and I watch Efka and Elaine's videos because they are very likable and they are funny, and therefore I watch them and I kind of trust them. And even though if they were transparent at the beginning of the video, I probably would forget, because I have a good time. I watched the video for like 10, 20 minutes and I really enjoyed it. And then I totally forget about, okay, it's not paid, but it is obviously biased, I would say, as a scientist. So do you think, and this question is for both of you, is transparency enough, or would it be better to simply separate those two issues? For example, I know that you were working on Wilmot's Warehouse, for example, you just told us, but do you, in your opinion, is it enough to just be transparent about it?
I think that it's a bit of that. There's always going to be some overlap based on the size of the industry and the closeness that you are likely to have with publishers. So, like, an example that I would use is where does it sort of end? Where is the moment where you say, this is, you know, this is where the gap should be? So, for example, if I have a friendly conversation with a publisher and I just like them as a person, I disclose that at the beginning of the video to say, oh, actually, I really like the people at Cosmos Games, really nice, and therefore I need to make you aware of that because I'm friendly with them. And where that line is will depend on who you are as a critic, but also where your audience thinks that line should lie. For us, for our audience, 90% of them think that just receiving a review copy is fine because, as you say, it's like we are picking up copies not to guarantee coverage. If we're getting sent something that's not it's the one-to-one, we get this and cover it. It's a more contorted process than that. But there is a different line for different channels where you choose to draw it as kind of part of your identity. So F11, right here, have a very, I wouldn't say very different, but slightly different approach to this than we do. It's just a slightly different line for a slightly different audience. And I think that you run the risk of the thing you lose as a critic is your audience. If you overstep those boundaries, if you see a line and then you step it, the thing that you lose is the audience, the thing that supports you. So that's why it's up to your discretion. There is a wider question, right? We want an industry that's broadly very transparent. And if we get to a point where everyone's taking huge amounts of paid previews, that's bad. But it is ultimately up to your own discretion. That's why I think that for me, asking that, I don't know the answer, right? But I know our answer. I know that where we stand on it is that whenever we have a relationship past a certain point, that's when the disclosure comes into full force. And if a lot of our audience know that they, you know, if they take this really seriously, if they're worried that they're going to get sort of sucked into paying for a game because they like the video, they will just not watch that video. They will say, oh, they've said it's paid up front. I don't want to be, you know, swayed by any advertising. I'll just close it. So it's a decision made by both the critic and by the audience at the same time. Because like I said, they're smart people. They know when we're being influenced. They know when they are being influenced themselves, I think, to an extent.
I have to admit, I have a different opinion on that one because I think that transparency is okay, but it's definitely not enough. And I think that humor at the beginning of a video and likability are actually these kind of Feigenblätter you put in front of it in order to make us digest it more easily. That is humoring about is like, you know, we did that, but you know that we won't influence you, and that is influence. That is totally like you try to get your audience to think it's not a big deal because I make a joke of it. I think the advertisement banner, and I think the transparency has to be neutral in some way. And if you say at the start in your voice, which people know and people love, they will not recognize what you've said. It's like, what did Tom just say right now? It's like, he's so likable. I like his green suit, but I'm not quite sure if they really dig what you are telling them. So I think that's a problem. And I mean, you do it, but there's no way around it. And I would really think about like doing it more neutral and like, I don't know, have on your page what you're working on. Would be a lot easier for me to do the division between the one thing you get paid for and the stuff you do on your own. I'm not quite sure if that's a valid answer, but that's my...
Thank you very much. And thank you, Tom, because I know it was a difficult question for you to answer, therefore. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, it's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for very interesting insights. I come from the other side, so to say. I do PR. I worked for a publishing house along the years, and now I'm working for a fair. And I would say that professionalism is needed on both sides. The publishing sides also have to do PR and working with journalism professionally. Sorry. And that also means that I'm on very friendly terms with a lot of journalisms. And if we work together, you can hate my games, you can criticize them, and I still would work with you. And I would say all the critics must not be afraid to criticize, must not be afraid to work with publishing houses on a professional level, and expect professionalism also from the PR side. Review copies are working materials, so you need them to do your job, and the publishing house should be able to give them away to you. So yeah, do differentiate between paid, do differentiate between liking the person but doing your job professionally, and expect the PR side to do it professionally as well.
Thank you for that perspective. That's great. Yes, and thank you all for listening and your questions. And we're going to go over to our first working groups. And so we're going back to our organizational part. Yes, thank you both for your talks.